Hidden somewhere in the world, there's a very special book. It holds all the answers to every question ever asked. And when it's open, it turns solid gold. Have you found your solid gold book? My book of gold, this story is about a little boy and his mom and dad who take him to the library, the New York Public Library, and he's bored. He doesn't want to be there. So they go to a toy store. He doesn't want any of those toys either, but he meets someone, the store owner, and the store owner tells him that there is a legend that somewhere in the world there's one very special book that's just waiting to be discovered. It will look like any other book, but it holds all the answers to every question ever asked. And when it's open, it turns to solid gold. She also gives him the information, or giving him good luck. And she says, "Good luck in your search, young man. You'll need patience and fortitude to find that book of gold." That book of gold is your special book. And today, with the Youth Services staff, we are going to share with you many, many 2017 copyright dates so you can find your book of gold. With this show, we have Rosie, and she works in the Youth Services Department, as well as Chris and Danielle. And I'm Jerry, Youth Services Manager at your public library. Welcome to a special edition of Well Read. Best Books 2017. We wait every year to do this show, right?
Yes,
Yeah, we all enjoy this show. So we want to start, this show is all about board books, picture books, and beginner reader books, or what we call ETR books here at the Ames Public Library. So what book would you like to start with, Danielle?
Well, I thought we might start with some board books, maybe Making Faces.
All right, that was hopefully one I wanted.
So I love this book because it's just so great. It's calls itself a first book of emotions. So you open it up, and there are all these babies' faces, and it says, "Look at the surprised baby." And then, can you find that baby? And can you make a happy face or a surprised face? And so the baby or the child gets to go through and look at all these pictures of, and kids and babies love to look at pictures of babies. And there's a mirror, which is a really fun part. So it's just a great book. Works on those emotional, social skills, also just really fun. And if you look at the cast of babies, it's a very diverse cast. It's multicultural.
Yep, and diversity is one of the main themes that we have throughout our literature, what's been published the last couple years,
Yeah.
With We Need Diverse Books movement. The other thing, I know there's some research out that shows that children respond better to real faces and real facial actions than they do any drawn picture or clip art type of thing. So these are the kind. And unfortunately, there's not as many of these published as there are other board books, but a fantastic board book.
It's really good.
And then I understand Taco. You would like to talk about Taco? Taco's kind of a lot different than Faces.
Yeah, there's a wide range of board books. So this is just a fun one because it's part of a series that's called Cook in a Book. And so what it is through flaps and moving things, it goes through making a food. So in this one, it's making tacos. So you can pull the flap and your chicken cooks and you chop things. And there are places you can take things out. And it's super fun. I think it's a great one because you can start it with little kids when they're like a year old or something, but my older son, he's 4, he still really likes to play with this book.
Probably gets the concept of chopping the vegetables
better than
and
my daughter,
the other
who just
movable parts.
Chomps on things herself.
Another sign of a really good board book is that it serves different age groups. So.
It's a toy and a book. So I love that. And I think it would be a good one to take on a trip.
Oh, keep them busy
in the car.
So Chris, I know you chose a couple board books.
And I would like to talk about lines because you just mentioned your children. I happen to know Sarvinder, who wrote this book. She's an Ames native. This is a book basically about concepts, starting with just a simple line and going into shapes. And it's interesting because you start with that line and you end up in outer space. So there's a little bit of STEM going on in there. What's so great about this book, number one, the colors are a little bit unusual. They're not your primary greens and yellows and oranges and everything. Sorry, oranges are secondary. Danielle's even talked about how her kids, these lines in the book are raised, and so the kids can literally follow along with their fingertip and feel the lines as they go. So it's just really a neat concept book that can work for little children and even older ones because it's got these concepts that develop. It starts out with something so simple and then gets more and more as you go. So
and we know that shapes are the precursor to learning our letters and our alphabet.
Using your finger is a precursor to learning to write and hold a pencil.
So lots of good things going on in this book.
It's just beautifully done.
Yeah, in addition to Sarvinder being an Ames native, so we have an author in our community as well.
Sure.
And then let's go ahead and do the last one
So
too,
Flora and the Ostrich.
I love Flora.
Molly Idle's done a lot of Flora books now, and I was looking back, and I think that almost all of them, if not all, are with birds. Isn't that right? They're all birds.
Yep.
So this one's about opposites, and it's just so cute because it's, except for very few words, you can talk with your child throughout the book about the opposites and what they mean, and you really have to look at the facial expressions of the little girl and then of the ostrich, and see obviously under and then over. And at the end, they might need a little parental involvement in figuring out what some of the concepts mean, because I think it might be the next one after apart.
Oh, that's the
The
last
one,
page.
the ostrich starts to leave. She thinks that she doesn't want to talk to her anymore, and it's just a really sweet book. And again, beautifully done, very simple, but here they are together in the end. So,
Very,
again,
very
I
nice.
love the colors. It's
And Flora's facial expressions and her body. And,
the body language that
is
you
so
get
fabulous.
through all of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so whimsical.
Any of the Flora books are really cute.
Our recommends. So since we're talking kind of artistic wise, and we definitely want to get to these books, let's go ahead and do Once Upon a Jungle.
All right, this was one of my all-time favorites. Number one, the graphics in it are just stunning when you open up these full pages, and all on the black background. It's basically the life or the food cycle, and yet it's done with such perfect words. My favorite spread is when it talks about, first you have the ant, and then the praying mantis, and then a lizard, then a monkey, and then the panther. And the panther even dies in the book, but the way they portray it
It's beautiful.
is just, I think it's going to go back.
Let me turn
Yeah,
my book
have
and
Jerry
look
look
for
at
it. And
I mean, you can talk about death in this way, that this panther ends up dying and has bugs covering him, but this picture of it is just so
It's gorgeous.
gorgeous. There, look at that. I mean, what a great way to portray that things do pass on, and yet they help other things.
and then after that page, she starts over.
And then she starts over
Just like
again.
life does.
And the big jungle picture, it would be something you could read with your kids over and over. You could pick out different things. You could pick out colors. It's
It's a fabulous book.
wonderful.
It's a great STEM book too, to teach that diversity and
Yes.
food circle.
And at
food
the
cycle
end
and
is
all that.
the end pages. That's one
Yeah,
of the things
they've
I
got some
forgot.
good-
They've got good
Yeah.
end pages that describe
What's
in
going
the fold
on.
out. It's pull it
I
out.
love that.
We're giving Jerry all
I
these
know,
hard,
giving her a
folding.
lot of work to do.
These
but-
books are not made like they used to be, just
No.
turn one page. So they come up, open, and shut in many ways.
Yeah, but
So
the
good.
fact that they go into that, like you said, the STEM
Yeah.
is.
Yeah,
You
very
can
nice.
use this in a science class easily for older kids even.
A
Once
good
up-
introduction.
Yeah. Once upon a time, Once Upon a Jungle, sorry, I'm reading the back.
Yeah.
A great science book, STEM book, but also a piece of art
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So speaking of art, shall we go to our blue book?
Yeah, so this is by Isabel Simler. She's both the author and the illustrator. So the blue hour is that magical hour that occurs between the day being done and the night just getting started, when everything is just bathed in this blue. One review calls it a symphony in blue, so which is kind of what it is. You also have a palette of blue, so this would be a great book for having conversations about how we see color. Like if you ask someone and they say their favorite color is blue, you can show them this spread and ask them, which blue is your favorite color? Mm-hmm. Blue is not just one color. It starts out from pale blue to midnight blue, where you have blue which has green in it and blue which has purple in it, and it goes through the entire gamut. And the book does too. Has absolutely stunning pictures, gorgeous book to sit with your child maybe at the end of the day, to quiet down before you go off to bed. Just absolutely visually stunning, and the words are minimal but very rhythmic and very beautifully done.
And I was going to say with you too that the words being minimal, they don't distract at all, or take away from the photo, because you have to look for them. Mm-hmm. But that really helps with the illustrations, I think.
Right. This book, it's just an interesting aside, it started off its life in French. So it's a translated book.
It's a translated book and reprinted over here
We have a
over
couple
here
like
in the
that.
United
I
States.
think Once Upon a Jungle was by British author and illustrator. So
yeah, that's very interesting.
Worldly picture books.
And then we have Water Song.
So this is another STEM book. It's about the, you can take that tag off the front.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
It's
about the water cycle, and yet in it there's this cute little fox that goes through the beginnings of the rainstorm. It's all done in verse, but very minimal. So you start out with the drip, drop, plip, plop, and then it goes into these great sound words that you can hear. I mean, I said it just one of those things that made me. I must be a water baby because I love anything that has to do with water.
But it's soothing.
I like good rainstorms too, though, so that's okay. But just the way that the focal point is so close, it's not like everything is from a distance. You are right in there in the picture. You're right involved with the entire thing. And of course, there's thunderstorms, and at the end, the fox comes out with babies even. So there's a little life cycle going on in there too.
Interpretation of the picture.
Yeah. And again, an end page with more factual information about water and ecosystems and so on. So
Water
it's by
Song.
Tim McKenna. It's really beautiful.
The fox, the last one with the picture, it's done like in, is it Bambi, that they do spring comes and it's Twitter
Spring
feeding?
comes in, that's when spring babies arrive, so it makes sense.
So I think it's time for a game.
Oh, I'm ready.
Are you
guys ready?
ready?
Oh, what are we doing?
Rock,
paper, scissors.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
Okay, I think both of you need to play again.
Yeah. Shall we try again?
Rock, paper, scissors. Oh,
I
well,
gotcha.
you know what? I'm
You know
still
what?
going to take
That's
this.
all part of the game.
It's
is that,
all part of the
you keep
game,
going
yeah.
until you actually win. So tell us about this book.
So
It's
this
fabulous.
is The Legend of Rock, Paper, Scissors by Drew Daywalt and illustrated by Adam Rex. And it is amazingly funny.
It is
So the concept is there are these three characters. One is Rock, and he is just beside himself because he cannot find anyone who he can beat. Because long ago, in an ancient and distant realm called the Kingdom of Backyard. And so he is always victorious. He fights a clothespin. He fights the mystical tower of Grandma's favorite apricot tree. He fights that apricot. And he just keeps winning. And it's hilarious. Like,
He gets bored.
he does. He gets sick of winning
yeah.
every
Yeah.
time. I'm trying to convince my 4-year-old that it's not fun to win every single time. He doesn't believe
great
me.
lesson.
Yeah. That's why we play Candyland a lot.
convince my husband.
But then there are other characters as well. We have Paper, and Paper always wins, whether it's against the printer and or the half-eaten bag of trail mix in the trash. And it's just really clever how they figure out what they win. Like he blocks out the sun. For some reason, the trail mix has Scottish accent. And then, so he's depressed because no one's beating him. And the same with Scissors. Her favorite thing in my life for her to battle is the dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets. But this is actually one of those books that I read it, and then within the next 2 days, I tracked down every single youth services staff and made them read it.
And that was all the laughter that was happening.
Yes.
I heard that out in the office, and I read it, and I heard it in my office.
Of course, Danielle comes at it with those children of hers in mind, too. So
I haven't read this at home, I should. And then they fight each other, and then they're just so happy because they are winning, or they're losing. And it says that now this is a never-ending game, and so children play it to honor. So this is actually a fantastic book for all ages, obviously, but I think it would just be so fun to read with those elementary age students as well. We have so many great books, and I think people forget that elementary aged kids still love picture books.
That's true.
And reading with a parent or another grown up. So this, I can just imagine sharing this with like a 7-year-old.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yep.
Well, a lot of the kids do use that game to decide
Right.
things.
Yeah.
We've seen it
do
happen.
to
So.
make it happen, and like 3-year-old, third grade reading level is usually what a picture book is, unless it's a concept book. And so your comment about elementary children using picture books, they don't always get there because they think they're baby books, but
So
they're
they
very
miss-
important.
And they miss out on some of those great older kid books.
Right.
So if you guys want to know, we have some that we can give you for your older kids.
And you adults that are playing rock, paper, scissors and wants to know the history of rock, paper, scissors, here's
is
the
where
book
it
for
is.
you. A
Maybe
great,
it'll be a folklore book.
yeah, it's
In
a great.
100 years.
Don't you
they're
think
like,
it'd be a great party book? You know,
Oh,
that you
yeah.
could go to a
Right.
party and start doing that and then reading the story. All right, so we got one more that you guys asked for, and that was this book. So Rosie, share with us our story.
So this is Town is by the Sea, and it's by Joanne Swartz and Sydney Smith. Joanne Swartz packs a double punch. She is an author and also a children's librarian, has been one for 25 years. So, you know, it comes from somebody who really loves to read and write too. The book is a beautiful book. It's told in 2 parts. One part happens up above, so it's set in Nova Scotia, and this is a mining town, and it's by the sea. So there's a little boy, and his life is filled with light, and he plays by the sea. He runs errands for his mother, and he has friends to play with. And then there's the flip side, and that's the story of his dad, who's a miner. And his dad is in this deep, dark pit under the sea. And he's mining. It's dangerous, full of hazards, and even there's even one part where the ceiling collapses. So every day is dad coming back home today? And there's a lot of connection, because the book starts off where the young boy goes to visit his grandfather's grave. And so it's a very poignant story, in the sense at the very end he says, this is going to be my life too, the little boy says, going down into the mines. And what I really love about this book is, it celebrates the simple things in life. There's beauty in just a good day, in just, everyday things. And there is, you might think of it as simple, but there is deep beauty in that. And the illustrations are absolutely
The illustrations are
fabulous.
wonderful.
that light
It's a
just
very
covers.
moving
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
great way for, we have, I guess I was going to say we don't have any coal mines around here, but we do. But we don't have mining in
Right.
this large of a sense. And it's a great way for children that aren't around miners and to learn more about what a day in the life of a
Right.
miner is all
Right.
about. Quite a bit more serious than rock, paper, scissors. but,
Right.
I love
our-
the relationship between the son and the father.
And the father, yeah.
Yeah, that you can still have that even when dad's off to work every day.
And Dad is that dedicated. He comes home and he plays with
Right.
them, and you know, there's a whole lot of fabulous
Yeah.
messages in this book. So we have time for one more picture book, and then we'll go to our beginner reader books.
What do you think?
Which one?
Crown.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
a very important happening in every child's life. So tell us about Crown.
So Crown is about a young man, or a young boy, young man, I'd say a 3rd or a 4th grader, and he is headed off to the barber shop. He is going to get his hair cut. And let me tell you, he is going to look good when he is done. So he is talking, it's amazing. He is talking about how wonderful he is going to look. He's going to look so good. It's the look your English teacher gives you when she hands you your last test with a bright red 97 slapped on it. I'm reading the pages there. Or when your mom kisses you before she tells you you're beautiful, and you're like, my mom thinks I'm beautiful. So it's just a beautiful, like the illustrations are amazing. Like they look, I think they're pastels or oil. I'm not really sure. I would have to look it up. The illustrations are great. This is a main character with attitude. And it's a beautiful book. This particular, it's one of the first in a new publishing imprint. Deneen Miller, I think, is
The Deneen Milner book. Yep.
yeah. Okay. And so it's about the African American experience in
And
life.
I love his attitude. You
Yes.
can see his
Right.
attitude.
He
on
knows
the
it.
picture.
He
We all
knows
know
he
when we
looks
look at this
good.
cover what's going
Yeah,
on.
so I would love to share that with kids who are going to go get their hair cut or aren't maybe interested. But that's another one that would maybe be good for older kids.
So I understand two of you picked this. One of you picked one book and one of you picked the other book, and you didn't know the two of you were picking the same character. So tell us in a real quick way what this book is all about and why you liked it.
Charlie and Mouse came first, right?
Yep, Charlie and Mouse is the first one. These are easy to read, and they are just sweet, sweet books about relationships. Between the first one, Charlie and Mouse, is about the relationship between these two brothers. I especially love the first chapter when they're getting up because their mom is asleep and they're talking to the lump, and she says, "I'm asleep." "You're not asleep, you're talking." "I'm a mom, I can do what I want." So it just great relationships, quietly funny, great illustrations.
I think they got along better than my two boys. but although that's not fair, mine got along until they didn't get along. And so then the other one, flip, is Grumpy, Charlie and Mouse and Grumpy is their grandpa. And what I loved again was about the relationship between the three of them, but especially that Grandpa always knows the right things to say. He's just this very calm demeanor, and he just kind of talks to them throughout the book. And Mouse uses his blanket for a lot of the things that Mouse wants. He sort of transposes himself into the blanket wants this, blanket wants that. And at the end, Blanket is sad to see Grumpy go. And Charlie finally says, "I don't think it's Blanket that he's talking about. And it's Mouse that's sad to see Grumpy go." But again, a just beautiful relationship between little boys and their grandfather. And we don't have a lot of books about that especially with two children.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of grandparents and a one child, but not
not
a
the two
family
here.
like that. So
Well, I hate to say that with patience and fortitude, we're moving on to our next age group. I want to thank you all for coming and sharing. We have many, many more books that we think could be your book of gold. So continue watching, and with patience and fortitude, we move on. In our quest for Book of Gold, we travel. Our character Isaac travels through time. He's a young man, he's a teenager, he becomes an old man in the very end when he does find his book of gold. We're going to continue on trying to find our book of gold, our right book for the right person at the right time. And now I have 3 more members of our team, youth services team. We have Bree and Jill and Anastasia. And I understand, Anastasia, you would like me to read one of these poems out of the story before we talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's called The Frog Race. My frog, it crossed the finish first. You saw it with your eyes. My frog, it crossed the finish first. Why don't I get the prize? My frog, it crossed the finish first. I didn't cheat. You know it. Just show me where the rule book says you're not allowed to throw it. I'm just no good at rhyming. What do you think about this book, Anastasia?
I think this book is just hilarious, and I really, really enjoyed reading it. There's a lot of like surprise endings like that, and just funny things, and sometimes it's interactions between parents and kids, and sometimes it's just kids thinking about the world. So there's the funny ones, but then there's also the poignant ones. Like this one here is called The Valley Shaped the Mountains, and it talks about how sometimes life is like a valley and sometimes it's like a mountain, and we have both parts, and that's kind of the way life is. So I think this book would be a lot of fun to share as a family, or just for a kid reader to enjoy on their own. So highly recommended.
And I know when I was reading through it and stuff, it's poetry, so I mean,
Yep.
it hits the emotions and things. And so when I read one page, I'd feel one way, and then I'd go to the next poem, or maybe a couple poems down the way, and I would feel happy or serious.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I
very
mean,
much.
so it was really very, very well done. And of course, poetry speaks very well to all of us. So,
Yeah.
all right. So let me go on, and what did we decide? We're going to go with survivors first. we'll change. That's my right? We're going to change and go with survivors. And so tell me a little bit about survivors.
Go ahead.
Okay, so both Jill and I read this book, that's why we're looking at each other, and we really enjoyed it. And so it has several, 18 or so true to life tales, things that really have happened over the last couple hundred years, where people were in a really dire situation, but they did make it out. It must be said that they didn't always make it out in one piece, or maybe a piece was missing by the time they got back. But you can see there's oceans, there's deserts, there's mountains, climbs, a marathon. The desert was a marathon. There it is. But also there's several scientific expeditions, like one at the bottom of the sea and a couple other ones where I just was like, wow, I didn't know science was like so dangerous. I don't know. Jill, what were some of your favorites?
I love the Ernest Shackleton story.
Oh, I love that one too. Yeah.
Because it does talk about how, as the dogs got weaker throughout the trip, that was unfortunately what they ate. And then what I didn't expect was the dog livers are full of vitamin A, and vitamin A in those amounts is poisonous to the human body. So they would describe how parts of their foot were just falling off because of the vitamin A poisoning and things like that. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I really think if you liked the I Survived series,
Yeah.
this would be a wonderful addition to that sort of a thing. It's a little bit more intense.
It is, yeah. There are grisly details.
Oh, yeah.
Like beyond parts falling off.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but anyone
People
who likes
cutting
that
parts
extreme,
off so they could get
Yes.
out.
yes, cutting parts off so they could get out.
Yes.
But it also feels like you're traveling around the world, like you're going to
Yes.
the mountains and the desert. So that's kind of fun.
And I thought because they date each
very
each one, the man that got caught and he had to. It took me back to that day when I read the newspaper article or heard it on the news. There was another one in there. Due to many reasons, I'm watching a lot of television these days, and one of the stories in here was one of the the story of one of the Scorpions shows. So it was like, oh, I know about this.
Right. Yeah.
So it's so those children that also relate to television may also
right.
grab this and be. Or I'm relating myself to being a child, but it would speak to a lot of people and their short little stories. So
Right.
you can read and be successful in a story and then put it down and then come back to it. So
Yeah.
very good.
And people always like to cheer for the underdog, right?
Yeah.
Like they're always, the Olympics are coming up soon and stuff like that. And it's all of those heartwarming stories of these people who are fighting to like be the best at something and do something.
Right.
And like, this is real life. So this is so appealing to kids because it's something that like these actually happen, and kids can grab onto that and be like, I'm cheering for them, even though I know it's done and it's past and
Right.
you know what's happened, you're still cheering for them along the way.
Very, very true. So,
Yeah.
well, and speaking of cheering for people to go on, even though you know what's going on in the world, we have 3 very interesting books, and I know,
Yeah.
Bree, you had 2 of them, and Jill had 1. So let's talk
Yeah.
about The War I Finally Won.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, Kimberly Brubaker Bradley published this book, The War That Saved My Life. And I don't know about you guys, but it was the patrons that recommended it to me before I really heard about it a lot in like review journals and things like that. And kids were loving it. And so this is actually the sequel to it. So The War I Finally Won picks up right where the other one left off. And it is about Ada and her brother, and they have escaped London to get away from the war. Parents knew that the bombs were coming, the war was coming, so they sent their kids out into the country, and Ada and her brother were out there. They've been taken in. But this is a much different look because it's how the war affected these guys. They weren't necessarily getting bombed all the time, but the war was right there in their country and the effect on it. And it showed a different perspective than I had knew. And it's great because the story continues because you've learned to love these characters, but then you also learn so much about the war from this other side. Like how all these estate owners and stuff had to give up their homes, and like all of like every inch of the land was plowed to plant potatoes and to plant crops so that they could have enough food. And part of the time is everybody completely stopped what they were doing just to harvest potatoes because they were all ready to go, so they would have enough food to last and throughout the war and stuff like that. And that's, I mean, everything is consumed by potatoes at one point of your life and stuff. So it was a really cool look, and the story is wonderful how it continues. So it's really exciting to have another installment.
So I know when you suggested this one, you also suggested this title because thinking about teachers and studying history in World War II.
So Making Bombs for Hitler is kind of another one because it gives you a totally different look on, it's not just the Nazi concentration camps. It's a different look. So this follows a girl and her sister, Lyda, and her sister Larissa, and they are Ukrainian. So they're not part of this, but they get caught in the middle of, when Russia's coming over, and Hitler actually goes over and steals the children from Ukraine and brings them over to be his workhorses. And they go to work camps and they do all this, and they're not Jewish and they're not this, but they're still in this awful situation, much like these children are. And I didn't realize that part of history had happened and that part of the world was so affected in such a different way too. So this is about her and some of the jobs that they were given at these camps, and making bombs was one of them, and kind of how they rallied together to find hope in a situation that was completely heart-wrenching. Yeah.
So let's continue on with our history in another story in a different perspective.
Yeah.
And Jill, I know this was your pick.
Yeah, this is Step Up to the Plate by Maria. Step Up to the Plate, Maria's Thing by Uma Krishnaswamy, and this takes place in World War II also, and it's about a group of people that I didn't know existed. They were immigrants who'd come to America and intermarried, and it was Indians who tended to be either Muslim or Sikh, and Mexicans who were typically Catholic. And so Maria is the product of one of these relationships called Adi, half and half. And she's growing up in a place where it's Southern California, and she's not white, so she's not one of the typical students there. And being half and half is also a problem for many of the other kids in the school there. One of her teachers decides she wants to start a softball league, and Maria wants to be part of it, but her Indian father doesn't want her wearing shorts that she needs to wear, and her mother just wants her taking care of her little brother instead. So she's dealing with those things, and then she realizes that some of her friends have been sent away to internment camps. The Japanese have been. And then her parents, the house that they live in, becomes somewhat of a tenuous situation because her parents are not allowed to own land in California during these times. So their farm may be taken away from them, and so she knows all these other things are coming up. And then there's another girl there who's got a whose heritage is German, though she's American. And there's a lot of hate between this American girl and these immigrant families. And so she's got so much coming at her from so many ways, and I thought it was a really wonderful way to introduce a lot of these topics and issues, just to step on them very quickly, and to an upper elementary student who didn't see these things happening in other World War II books. And in the end, she learns to step for herself and she finds her voice. But it's really interesting to watch how she goes through her process. It's beautifully done, very well written.
So highly recommend.
Highly recommend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are these your books of gold?
Some of my favorites for the year. for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So we're talking a little bit about immigrants. Let's go ahead and go to one of our groups, our team's favorite book for one of the favorite books for the year, and it's Her Right Foot. And who would like to talk about Her Right Foot?
I would.
Yeah.
This is gorgeous. This is all about the Statue of Liberty. And Dave Eggers goes into it and talks about how she came to our country and how she was built and what she symbolizes. And he talks in a very conversational way, so he talks directly to the reader in that way. And asks a question to the reader and then explains the point of view. But he focuses in on the statue's right foot and how it's moving, and how we don't notice that in society. We see the crown, we see the light, we see all sorts of other things, but we don't notice her foot. Her foot is moving forward, and it's a huge foot. So he says, we shouldn't be missing this because it's a huge foot, but we do. And what does that mean? And what his conclusion is that we are having to move forward all the time. Society moves forward all the time, and we need to bring our people with us. But we are also reaching out with that right foot as we go out to bring other immigrants to our country. So it works both ways, and the statue kind of represents from both sides, and it's just beautifully done, and I cried at the end.
It's a particularly moving book.
Yes.
I mean, and a lot of emotions are done. I know I read it aloud to one of my granddaughters, and who don't quite understand the whole world, in the world point of view. And it was very interesting to hear her comments and see how she moved through the book and got more and more emotional about it, and what she meant. She's also a French lover too. So when I started, I said, "Did you know where did the Statue of Liberty?" France, Grandma. How did you know that? And I'm going, well, did you know that it was put together once and then taken back apart so it could come and be shipped here? No, I didn't know that. And then we just went on to the other parts of the book. But Anastasia, I know you were real moved by it as well.
Yeah,
So
it was. And just to also note that there were several members of our team, like Tanvi actually wrote a whole library notes column about
Correct.
this. So yeah, that's worth reading too. And one of the things she mentioned was that it was copper colored when it came, and it took some time, some years, I want to say maybe 10 years or something, to slowly turn. And that's another one of those changes. Like we're always moving forward and changing, and that's represented even by the statue itself. So.
Well, and then they talk about her facing which direction she faces, and I had known that, but that reminded me of that she is facing this way. But if you look at her this way, she's facing this other way, or this way, so she's looking on the whole horizon.
Yeah.
So it is a very great book, and if you don't read anything else from any of our other talks that we've had in the 3 parts, this is one that you definitely need to read.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree.
That's my book of gold for this year. But another book of gold that we had, I think, for several staff members was this one. Who would like to speak to this one?
Yeah, go for it. So this is Grand Canyon by Jason Chin, and he has done several books like this for young people over the last couple of years. Island was my favorite. It's about the Galapagos.
Yes.
And in all of them, he does this large format, illustrated. So there's the illustrations, but then also the text, and they really work together for you to come to a deep understanding of like the scientific geological forces that created it, and then there's a lot about the different animals that were there, and The interesting thing about the Grand Canyon is it's so big and so deep that there's actually like different ecozones or habitats. So different types of animals live there even today. And then he also chose to put in some people, today's people. I think a dad and her daughter that are taking a hike to kind of bring it home. So
I feel like when you take something like this, I mean, the Grand Canyon is this epic, like, wonder of the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
And how do you put it in a book that's, 12 inches tall? And his illustrations and how the detail that he puts into the book really helps give you that scope of, this is an epic thing, but it's approachable, and here's the cool pieces about it. I mean, that's gorgeous.
right.
And he goes outside the 12 inches.
Yes, right. Yes. He can, he's famous enough. He can get the big flaps.
How
But
wonderful
it's
is that?
It's real, and you can go visit
It's
it.
real.
And actually, one of our team members, Rosie, did go to the Grand Canyon with her whole family.
And she
at
brought her own
Christmas. She brought her book, and she got it stamped, I believe, with the national park symbol right there.
Yeah.
So
Green circle.
it's not just something out there.
Yeah.
It's a real place that you can go to visit. So it was really awesome to just learn all that geology, and it was really fun.
And we've been talking in the group right before us about some of the STEM activities that you can do with a variety of our books. And this would be a different one too, that you could pursue that STEM type of knowledge and trying things out by looking in our Grand Canyons that we have here in
Go make
Iowa.
your own observations.
Right, to make it happen. All right, so we've gone from World War II to, from laughter to World War II to the Statue of Liberty and the Grand Canyon, some of our American type of places to go. Where would we like to go next?
Let's lighten it up a little bit. Some graphic novels.
All right, so I know which two you're talking about, because these are, anytime you put a dog's head together and a man's head or man's body, because the head is dead, and the body died, and then you sew them. So tell me about it.
So this is from the creator of Captain Underpants, and Diff Pilkey, and it's pretty much exactly what you would expect. And that is exactly why it is so hugely popular and so funny. I mean, it is a dog's head on a man's body, and he's like the ultimate cop and gonna fight crime and fight the bad guys, and these bad guys just try everything they can and cannot bring this dog down. So it's just absolutely hilarious. It's also I feel like a step down in reading level from the Captain Underpants books. And so I feel like it's a really good transition for kids who want something funny and want a graphic novel but aren't quite ready for some of the meat of some of the other ones. This is one of those perfect transitional.
This one has less words.
Yes.
And more graphic novel.
there's less of an intricate plot.
Yes.
Right.
Which, surprisingly, Captain Underpants does have intricate plots.
Just saying.
He's very
Going on, Jill.
He's very low comedy. I get it. But he references things like The Grinch and Flat Stanley and The Wicked Witch of the West. So that just
He's bringing in literary
yes,
elements.
he is. He's brilliant. And I know parents really don't. You often hear the parents not liking these books, but they do get their kids to read, and the kids do move on from them, and they are constantly checked out. So there has to be something redeeming about them if they're always checked out like that.
Well, and again, in getting our reluctant readers to read, we need to give them something that talks to them, their book of gold, so they can want to read, and then read the other ones that parents want them to read.
And just to develop that fluency of being
and
able
that
to read over and over.
and yes, definitely.
And he is Dogman's very, very lovable.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
He
yeah.
just
Well,
he's
who
sweet.
couldn't be when you have a dog's head
That's
in
on a man's
human
body.
So we are running out of time, so I'm going to get real serious again, but we're going to stay in the graphic novel realm and talk about friends, real friends, not friends, but real friends. And so what are real friends?
This is probably my book of gold from the past year. I read this and I was like, why didn't I have this book when I was going through
Definitely.
school? Like, this spoke to me in so many ways, because the main character, Shannon, I mean, it follows her path from like when she starts school in kindergarten briefly through school. And it's just her navigating this world of the people that she is in this class, you know, her school class with, and trying to figure out who's her friend and who's not, and who's this power group is that is kind of running the show, and how does she fit in with it, and should she fit in with it. And I mean, it is every struggle that girls, I mean, I speak for girls because I grew up, you know, that's what I understood, but every struggle that a girl has going through school and trying to find their way and being okay with who you are, but trying to convince other people that it's okay, that I'm okay with who I am. And that sounds very convoluted, but that is the world of friends in growing up in middle school and in
And I
elementary
think
school.
there's something to be said about the family, big sister.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, because her interpretation or her thought process of her older sister really changes. I mean, it's a whole different, what she thinks her sister's like is not, or is because of reasons that she's struggling with as well. So
Yeah, and I would say definitely read the afterword.
Yes.
She
Yes.
talks
Yes.
about like her
Yes.
now, her adult perspective, because it is her real life, the author's real life, and she talks about her perspective. Like, this is how I saw my sister in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, but now I can look back and like see that it was really hard for her sister as well. So yeah, I think it's good to know there's some really hard scenes in this book. I was a little taken aback. But it's realistic and well handled.
And I think this is one that I would recommend like parents reading along with, or significant caregivers in their lives, that so you can have that discussion piece that talk about it and talk about her talk or her reasoning behind who this is and what happened and how it's okay now when you, I mean, I think children hear that, you know, it's not going to be like this when you grow up and it'll be all right. Just work through it. And this is actually a real life, a real live person that actually says that after she's been through all this.
Right.
In an easier format than solid words. The graphic portion of it helps us identify some of the meaning and the feelings behind it. Definitely, I think a must-have in every middle school, upper grade school's life, and not just girls. I mean, I'm sure it's probably going to be a hard sell for a boy to read about this, but necessarily.
If they don't want to read that one, they should read Brave. That one came out this year as well.
That's right.
And so just look up, it's just called Brave, and it's confined to middle school where this one kind of goes over. But he talks about his struggles and like, is this a real friend or not? And how do I speak up for what I need? And is this, you know, is this bad enough to call it bullying, or is this just like teasing, and working through all of that? So, you know, once you finish this one, you need more, or this one doesn't fit, ask us and we can help you find more.
What I liked about Brave too was that he turned it on himself and said, am I being a good friend by doing this? It wasn't just looking outward, it was also looking within. Which is important to remember too.
And I was just going to say about the empathy too, of how I think with her and her big sister that she didn't have empathy in the beginning. It was just her big sister was picking on her, or these other people were picking on her. But then as she grew, she also saw that there are reasons why people sometimes do. Not that it justifies what's done. But there are reasons why people do the things that they do. So it's kind of a serious one to end, but it is also kind of an overarching theme of most of our books, and your books for gold are. So with Patience and Fortitude, we've gotten this far, and we're going to go on with Patience and Fortitude with our teen books. So we'll see you there. Reading is not an option. We're finding our book of gold, which is our book that speaks to us. We're on our search, and we're with Patience and Fortitude. We're moving forward with a different age group. This one is our teens, and I have two of our team of youth services that are focusing in on the teen. One is our teen librarian, Tomby, And then Danielle, who kind of salt and peppers, or however you want to say, dabbles in teen, as the rest of us kind of do.
Yeah. I get to go in the teen room periodically.
Yeah, the experts in the room type of thing that we have here. So with that said, Danielle, which book would you like to start with?
I would like to talk about Song of the Current by Sarah Tolscher. Now, this particular book, I feel like she wrote it like she knew I was waiting for it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So it must be your book of gold.
Yeah, I think it's one of them. I have a lot over the years. But this one's just really good. It's a fantasy novel about a girl named Caroline, and Caroline is growing up with her dad. And her dad owns a riverboat, and so they kind of travel up and down in the river, delivering whatever goods they could find, sometimes doing a little smuggling. Mm-hmm. And but at the very beginning of the book, Caroline's dad ends up in prison, and to get him out, she agrees to smuggle this box that she doesn't know what's in it. Mm. So she says, okay, but she gets a few miles down the river and she's like, nothing on my boat that I don't know about. So she opens it up, and of course there's a young man there at her age. And conveniently, of course, yes, as books happen, but there wouldn't be a lot of story if it were, a 50-year-old.
There wasn't a little bit of romance.
Yeah, hopefully not. So it turns out that he is being chased by some people, and so she has to figure out, well, do I want to be on his side? Do I not? He's very annoying at first because she is incredibly competent. Like, when I walked away from this character, I'm like, she is so competent. I love her so much. She can do anything.
That's fantastic. And a female character that can do anything. All right.
Plus, she, as you read in farther along into the books, pirates come into it, and so there are pirates and magic and politics and love.
Just everything.
It was written for me. So I really enjoyed it.
So you're not going to tell us the ending?
No. You guys have to read it yourself.
We have to read this.
Especially since there is another book. I believe it comes out this summer. June, maybe. So it's a duology, I believe, so we won't have to wait for long after that.
So you'll have to read the Song of Current to find out that ending.
Yep.
All right, and we have Shattered Windows. Shall we do that one?
So that's a graphic novel?
Yeah, it's a different type of format. Tell us a little bit about what you think graphic, and we'll have Tommy chime in too about graphic novels and how they're written.
So in my world, or in my mind, I guess,
This is your
my
world.
inner world, graphic novels are a form of story where the pictures are just as important, if not more important, than the text. And so it can be a really great way. This one's great for older kids because, again, there are those pictures of violence and other things that make it a little more intense. So it's great for teens. But it is about a young woman who is growing up, and I would say she's probably somewhere between 18 and 20. And it's science fiction because her world has been invaded by aliens who are there basically just ripping of its resources. So if you are a human in this world, you either work in the mines or, like her, she works in a factory. And at the start of the book, she has no one. She just kind of goes to work every day, comes home every day. But as you continue, she starts to kind of, like her niece, she finds out that her niece is alive, who's 8, and she goes and gets her to live with her. And so she starts to kind of open up her world while also figuring out how to join the resistance that is on this planet, because
and the resistance is taking over the aliens.
Yeah, trying to take over. So it's really good. It's probably a great one for kids who like Star Wars, actually, because it's kind of like that that fighting the other and working. So they're kind of on the ground floor of the resistance, and you're hoping against hope by the end that they get their start.
Thinking.
And is this part of a series?
I haven't actually heard. It ends.
Does it have an end?
It ends, but you can see where they could
Okay.
keep going. So.
Keeping all doors open.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
See
it.
how well it sells.
I always like to call graphic novels, and this is in my childlike mind, so you have to kind of go with the flow. But it's a picture book for adults and young adults.
It's almost like a movie
but more
too,
intense.
where in a movie the actors' faces, their body language expresses as much, like Danielle was saying, as much emotion as the words do, and that really comes across in graphic novels especially.
And it's always amazing to me, the illustrator has to be so intense in that in order to make it a successful graphic novel and story too, to make that happen. So illustrations are very important, but it is young adult type of story.
And I will say that I think that that's published by First Second, and all of their graphic novels are always good.
All right, you've heard it from our teen librarian and Danielle. All right, so you've been kind of quiet, Tommy. Which book would you like to share?
I think I'm going to go with the Book of Dust. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Danielle's, as she was talking about the riverboat and being chased up and down the river. So the Book of Dust is by Philip Pullman. It's the first in a series of prequels to his Dark Materials, which a lot of people remember the Golden Compass, which is a hugely popular series. So this one is set about 10 years before the Golden Compass. And I will say that I have been looking forward to this book for forever, because his Dark Materials is just incredible. And this one was just as good as I thought it would be.
Was it worth the wait?
It was absolutely worth the wait, yes. So the main character in this one is a new character, and his name is Malcolm. He's 11 years old, and he's very smart, very inquisitive, very fiercely loyal to the people that he loves. And so when he's not at school, he helps out at his parents' inn. And so he listens to a lot of conversations that people have, and he meets a lot of really interesting characters there. And then in his spare time, he works on his little canoe. He's got a little canoe that he loves, which is very important. That comes very important later. And he hangs out with all of the nuns that live nearby, which is also important because they are secretly sheltering a little baby girl named Lyra. Anyone who knows anything about the Golden Compass series knows who Lyra is.
Lyra will be.
Who Lyra will become, yes. So Lyra, there's a prophecy written about Lyra, so she's very important. And Malcolm just becomes completely enchanted by her. I mean, he just adores this little baby. So the boat becomes important because a huge flood has descended on all of England. And Malcolm ends up needing this boat to survive, and also to help Lyra survive, and also to evade basically one of the creepiest villains I think I've ever come across in children's literature. Yeah, so it's a little bit darker, I think, than the original series, but it's just incredible.
So a highly recommended title, and especially if you're one of Philip Pullman's fans.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I can't wait to read it. I was flipping through it earlier. I'm like, I want the whole thing.
So is this your book of gold?
That one, yeah, and my other one
All
over
right,
there
let's
too.
see what the...
Yep. So The Gentleman's
did I
Guide
know
to
that?
Vice and Virtue. That one is one of the best books that I've read in a long time.
Another book of gold.
Yeah, it is like that book that you get your hands on, and it just makes you fall in love with reading all over again. So the cover is kind of fun and funky, and the book itself is really fun, and it's incredibly decadent, the way that you would kind of imagine a book about vice and virtue to be. So it's set kind of like, I don't know, nebulously in like the 17 or 1800s, I'm not sure. But the main character is born to a very wealthy aristocratic family. And so he's basically bred to inherit his father's estate and take over his father's business, which is great, except that he is a little bit of a rogue. So his name is Monty, and Monty, he gambles too much, and he drinks too much, and he talks too much. He's been kicked out of his like fancy boarding school, and he likes girls, but he also likes boys. And one boy in particular, who also happens to be his very best friend in the world, named Percy. So Monty's parents are not happy with any of these things at all. But luckily for him, he gets to leave home and tour Europe with his sister Felicity and Percy, his best friend that he loves. But unluckily for him, he does something really stupid while they're traveling, and they end up being like hunted all across Europe.
And of course, that makes for the story to happen.
It is hilarious, and like the Book of Dust, it is written just as well as the story. The storytelling and the quality of writing are both incredible, and I think it's kind of rare that you come across a book that has both incredible story and incredible writing. So those are like my 2 picks of the year.
Well, and it says here on the back, don't read this book unless you like adventure, hijinks, and forbidden romance. And if you do, then read it twice.
Yeah, I could see myself reading that one again.
Wow. The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. Okay, so then we have some books that, Star-Crossed. Let's do that one, Danielle.
Yeah, so Star-Crossed is a really great, so the ones we've been talking about have been a little more dense and maybe better for older teens. This one is a great middle school book because it is about a middle schooler. Her name is Maddie, and Maddie goes into theater. She is going to be a part of Romeo and Juliet. And she gets cast as Romeo. And they say, you know what, we'll just pull your hair back. You're really good at Shakespeare, it'll be fine. And she doesn't have a problem. She just wants to be a part of it. The problem is she gets a crush on the person who is playing Juliet. And it's a young woman from England, and her name is Gemma. And Maddie has had crushes on boys before, but she has never thought about having a crush on a girl. And so a lot of it is about Shakespeare and acting and friendship, but a lot of it is also about Maddie figuring out, well, who am I? Is this okay? What does this tell me about myself? And what I loved about it is although she worried, it all turned out okay in the end. Her family, she has a much older sister who's in college, who was a really huge support for her and helped her tell her mom, and her mom was great, and she was scared to tell her friends and her classmates, but although some of them didn't handle it great, like as might happen in the real world, the majority, it was a very kind and comforting kind of book.
In acceptance.
Yes. So, and it was a great, very sweet young romance.
All right. Well, and we all know that we like romances.
Yes, I think that's what
Every
we've
one of these have had a romance, so that's all part of evidently teen literature, right?
A lot of it, yeah.
Of course, and we're all it's been a while since I was a teen, but are exploring those types of things, and we're trying to figure out who we are.
And I just love that cover.
We're going to go with our non-fiction book here. Tommy, can you share with us Let's Get the Feminist Party Started?
So it's called Here We Are, and then it's 44 voices write, draw, and speak about feminism. So that's basically what it's about. So it's a compilation or a collection. There's 44 women and men who share their thoughts on feminism, their experiences with feminism, and it's really cool because it's essays, but then it's also comic strips and just like lists of things, poems. Some of them are even just song recommendations. And so while the submissions themselves are very diverse and the authors themselves are very, very diverse, there's kind of an overarching message to the whole book, which is basically that there's no one real definition of what feminism is. There's no right or wrong way to be a feminist. And I think that's what makes the book so powerful and so important, because I think we hear a lot of people say, I'm not a feminist because I don't do this, or I don't believe in that, or I don't act like this. And you can really derive from this book the idea that, well, you still can be a feminist even if you do this or believe that.
I always like to ask people, well, so what does a feminist act like?
Yeah, what do they look like?
What does it look like? Or what do they look like?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a really powerful book, even though it's so short. And if you flip through the pages, you can see it's really like kind of colorful, and it's just fun to look at.
Yeah.
So
Kind of
there-
like a notebook.
Yeah,
almost.
kind of, yeah.
There's a special author in here, though. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what's happening with that author?
So one of the pieces in here is an excerpt from Roxane Gay's book, Bad Feminist, and we are very, very lucky to have Roxane Gay coming to Iowa State, supported in part by the Ames Public Library Friends Foundation, and that's on April 5th, I'm pretty sure.
It's in April, I know, because
Yeah.
it's a very, very busy month
Yes. We're very excited about that.
for all ages. So,
Yeah.
Yes, and we are very excited about that with book clubs or book discussions and adult and youth programming. And
Yep.
so this is fantastic that we are hosting or in Ames an author that's been
Well,
here.
and then we could tie in too that we're also hosting Mindy McGinnis, who is a
Right.
YA author, and that is to tie in with Roxane Gay's visit.
Right, so
You just told me about one of your teens who just loves this book, and it was just great to
so
hear.
you can actually see it's Katie's tag pick. So Katie's a member of our teen advisory group, and she just, when she talks about it, like her body just starts going like this, and she just gets really excited because she absolutely was so moved by it.
cool.
Yeah,
Well, we should have Katie here to give
I
her.
mentioned that to Danielle.
We should have done that. Maybe next year we'll have another book that we can bring the people that are actually reading and that the books are written
for their right age group.
For the right age group.
I'm
So-
going to send that book to one of my cousins. She's 15, and I'm like, that's a good age. I'll just anonymously send it in the mail.
And then you think they'll know where it came from?
Probably.
I'm
They'll
thinking
figure it
of
out.
some of your board book choices in the past.
Could it possibly be that the librarian sent me this book?
It's between me and another cousin. It would probably
all right. There
be.
we go. So we have one author left, Jason Reynolds, and I have both of them here. Patina happens to be a continuation of Ghost, which is going to be our All Iowa Reads teen book discussion. So the whole state of Iowa will be reading the first one, Ghost, and this is a continuation of that story through another person's eyes. So Jason Reynolds wrote that one. But let's talk about this one, A Long Way Down. Talk about like suspense and
Yes.
going through a whole bunch of emotional states when I was reading it, hoping, just like he does with Ghost, and hoping that they would make a different decision, or finding out about the people that made the decisions that they did and wishing that they hadn't. So Danielle, give me your take on.
So Jason Reynolds is one of those authors that I will always read everything that he does because he's amazing. And everybody who's watching this, please come to the library. We'll help you find a Jason Reynolds book. We have one for everyone. But it is amazing. It starts out with this 15-year-old kid. And he just is living in a part of the country, a part of the world where his neighborhood, you know what to do when you hear shots fired. That's just part of his life. Everybody jumps to the ground and just hopes no one gets hit. But the last time shots were fired, his older brother stayed down when everybody else jumped up.
Yeah.
So he lost
hit
his.
that right away.
Yep, first few pages of the book. And then as he grew up, our young main character, his older brother taught him the code, which is, if I remember correctly, don't cry, was it don't snitch, and then get even, or something like that. And so he finds his brother's gun and goes off to get even. And that's where the book kind of gets strange.
Yeah. And strange in a way that as we're going down from his 7th floor apartment where he lives, after he looks in his brother's drawer and finds a gun,
Yep.
and he's thinking this through.
Like what?
And each floor brings on a different character.
Yeah, a new person joins him on the elevator, and it takes him it takes him a little while to figure out what's going on, because the thing is,
Took the reader at least in my case.
the thing is, everybody who gets on, they are dead.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a ghost.
Yep, they have they were victims of gun violence.
Whether they shot them or shot someone in addition to being shot.
Yeah.
So it's written in verse, which I know that Jason Reynolds enjoys writing because in that as well as narrative. But I know that Jason Reynolds, in doing some research on him and stuff, he thinks poetry is the way to get our reluctant readers and our readers to start reading the page instead of being so taken over by words.
Yeah, if you open it up, like it's just a lot more friendly.
Yes.
Like a kid who doesn't really like to read that much can open this up and go, wait a sec, I can do this. Look at all this. This isn't going to take.
Right. It won't take very long.
Yeah.
It's not intimidated by the
the
number of words or the number of pages, and it reads quickly, so you're successful in that reading as well. So.
And I want to point out the choice of the paper. It doesn't look clean. It's not like the bright white paper that we see. And so it actually reminds me of like the floor of an elevator that hasn't been washed lately. So.
And the way I liked the page numbers and the whole format of the book.
Yeah, it was beautifully.
Is very well done.
We have a graphic. Was it this one that Rosie really liked?
It was this
Yeah.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's a graphic designer, and
And she saw,
She
it's
saw
very,
all sorts of things. that
very
she,
purposefully done in addition to the writing. And so very compelling. And again, definitely a book that you would want to read. But part of what you want to do is read and discuss and hand it to
Yeah.
someone else so the message goes farther. So with Patience and Fortitude, we've been looking at YA books and trying to figure out what our book of gold is. And with the end of this session, I'd like to leave with these words. And these words are written by Christopher Myers and Walter Dean Myers about the group and the movement of About We Need Diverse Books. And they say, today's kids see books less as mirrors and more as maps. They are indeed searching for their place in the world, but they are also deciding where they want to go. They create, through the stories they're given, an atlas of their world, of relationships to others, of their possible destinations. It's necessary to provide boys and girls a more expansive landscape upon which to dream. Happy reading. Until next time.